Here we go. Hello, welcome. Day 2, We the People National Invitational. This is Unit 1 with South Seminole Academy from Florida. I am Christine Hull, your facilitator today, and in just a moment, I will have the judges introduce themselves, followed by our students, and then we will begin our hearing. Students will deliver 8 minutes of judge questions. My microphone will be muted during the hearing, and I will be holding up the 1 minute and time signs. I suggest that you use gallery view rather than speaker view. And I forgot to spotlight the kids again. Guys, I'm failing. I was so busy dancing. Okay, there we go. Students are spotlighted now, and at the conclusion of the hearing, judges will give brief feedback to the teams and we will conclude. Judges, it's all on you.
Okay, good afternoon. Okay, it's nice to see all of you again. As was explained, I will be starting out with the introduction of the teachers. They will introduce, the judges. They will introduce themselves. We'd ask that the students then introduce themselves. I'm still Alan Broadman from East Brunswick High School, or at least the retired aspect of East Brunswick High School. I'm looking forward to hearing from you guys today.
I'm Tim Moore from the Center for Study of the American Constitution at the University of Wisconsin.
And I'm Clifta Sangrider Jones with the University of Louisville's McConnell Center. And if you all could introduce yourselves.
We're Unit 1 from South Seminole Academy. I'm Catherine Brown.
And I am Catherine McCullough from South Seminole Academy.
Excellent. So I don't think it's any question as to where we're going with the question itself. We're doing number 2. So I will read the question and then you may begin. If man in the state of nature be so free as has been said, if he be absolute Lord of his own person and possessions, equal to the greatest and subject to nobody, why will he part with his freedom? Why will he subject himself to the dominion and control of any other power? How did John Locke answer these questions? According to John Locke and Thomas Jefferson, what is natural law in a state of nature? Do you agree or disagree with their reasoning? Why or why not? What did Locke mean by the social contract? Why did he think it necessary? What obligations does the social contract place on government and on the individual? You may begin.
To start off, John Locke and Thomas Jefferson both wrote about natural law. But what is it? Well, to put it simply, natural law is a moral law that comes from people themselves. Moral law would be, in essence, a set of morals you subject yourself to and therefore abide by. In a state of nature, everyone is free to do as they please, and this has caused some, such as Thomas Hobbes, to argue that natural law isn't a law, but a right. Hobbes argued that morality is based on a person's right to preserve themselves, pursue their own good, and essentially do as they wish in a state of nature. He also stated that people set their own moral duty to respect other people's rights, even in a state of nature. To go a bit further, Locke discusses a state of nature where men are free, equal, and independent. He champions the social contract and government by consent, through stating that government should shelter the rights of its citizens. John Locke had many ideas, natural law being one, and social contract being another. In the social contract, from John Locke's theories, is an idea that people sign a metaphorical or occasionally physical agreement where everyone agrees to have a society rather than a state of nature. This political theory has become prominent in American society today. Additionally, John Locke's take on the rights given up in a society is only based on the ability to punish and hurt other people for violating their rights. He says that it is the only right given up and that no other rights are sacrificed. When you enter a society rather than a state of nature, all you give up is the ability to hurt others without repercussions. This is a striking take from John Locke, but despite that, it still may hold true. The social contract places a safeguard on the government by giving us the ability to shut down or reform the government if needed. Citizens can also refuse to obey the government. Without this, we would have no certain way to protect ourselves from the government. We see an example of this when the United States first formed and we were under the Articles of Confederation. We came together and decided that these documents were not the best fit for us, so we changed and reformed them.
Although this process could take a significant amount of time, this method is useful to ensure that we are in the best government for our country to thrive. With citizens having the ability to shut the government down, it makes it so that the government really wants to serve the people and not their own agenda. Many people in a state of nature begin to ponder if joining a more united society was the right choice. They are quite confused as to why anyone would willingly part from the field and be subjected under any other form of power. In efforts to reassure them that this was the right choice, John Locke stated in Chapter 9, Section 123 of the Second Treatise of Government that though in a state of nature he has such a right, yet the enjoyment of it is very uncertain and constantly exposed to invasion of others. What he means by this is that in a society where no government or laws can be found, you are not completely entitled to respect from your peers. It can lead to unstable environments and restrain you from living your life the way you would want to, and you are constantly questioning your safety. Further evaluating his point, he states that this makes him willing to quit a condition which, however free, is full of fears and continual dangers, and is not without reason that he seeks out and is going to join in society with others. Although a state of nature can be dangerous and threatening, Locke also believes that a state of nature could actually be peaceful, because it is the absence of government, not the absence of mutual obligation. Thank you for listening. We are now open up for questions.
Okay. I'd like to look at this idea about that Locke asserts about the purpose of government being the protection of rights, and particularly natural rights. If so, can you tell me under what circumstances it would be possible, or it should be possible, that government can limit those rights?
When government can limit our rights is when we as humans, we can abuse them. Like the right to petition, we might go against that, like what happened at the Capitol. We started attacking, and that's an example of when we went too far. That's when government should limit our rights to put a certain line where we cannot cross in order to protect from others and to protect us from ourselves.
I completely agree. Our rights should be limited when they are taken too far, as in hurting other people or ourselves, such as inciting some type of violence that could infringe on other people's rights. When it starts to sort of hurt other people, that's when it takes it too far, and that's what our government limits. And I completely agree that that is something that is okay for government to do.
Do you think there's any state of natures anywhere right now in the world?
There are few places that have been unexplored. For example, in the Himalayan mountains, some of the mountains no one has discovered anything yet, and also small islands off of New Zealand. No one has been there yet, so I actually do believe there could be civilizations forming, and also on other planets. We possibly cannot be the only existence and on Earth, as well as on other planets, but I'm sure there are other living things, and maybe even aliens.
What if, I'm sorry, Catherine, you wanted to answer there? Or? Well, what if I said, let's come back from the Himalayas a little bit. And what if I wanted to live in the middle of the Everglades in a little cabin, no electricity, no roads, all by myself. Have I left the social contract? Am I in a state of nature?
No, I don't think you're on the same nature because, well, the Everglades, that's still in like the United States, and the United States is a government. Therefore, you're still under the protection of the government, even though you live by yourself.
Okay, thank you.
I agree, you are still under the jurisdiction of the Constitution and the Florida's government. Since you are still technically on American soil, all of the laws still apply. So that wouldn't count as a state of nature because there is still a government and there are still laws.
Thanks. I'm going to pivot us a little bit here. What should people have the right to do if their government does not serve the purpose for which it was created? Again, what should people have the right to do?
Well, people can always overthrow the government when it becomes abusive, and that's just like a right that we have. So,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, people have the right to reform the government if it's not fulfilling its purpose, and that's what there is to do. You can protest and then eventually just create a new government if it is needed. And that is what our Constitution allows us to do.
Okay, so I'm hearing the words reform. I think, Catherine, you said overthrow. What's the distinction there? When are you going to want to overthrow? What's the threshold there? Or when would you want to overthrow versus, as Catherine pointed out, reform? And maybe not you specifically, but just sort of a general question.
in some cases, like things cannot be repaired. Like you just need to start from scratch, a clean slate. So when things have gone too disastrous and chaotic, you need to take a step back and really rethink the whole thing. But if just, let's for say, one part of the government, like if a government that hasn't spread out the powers equally, like we have in the United States, the three branches of government, you might need to just take that part of the powers and reform that, not the whole government.
I agree. When you overthrow it is when it becomes like too tyrannical. And when you would want to reform is when there are still parts that you can salvage. If you had a constitution and there was one specific part that would be infringing, that would be a sort of situation where you would want to reform it. But if the entire Constitution infringes and doesn't protect the people's rights in a way that makes sense, sort of like the Articles of Confederation, you can just abolish that and then make a new government to fulfill its purpose.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, I think it opens up to the question of the American Revolution. Were things so bad to meet your standard of it's too tyrannical? It wasn't a single. I mean, was that revolution justified?
I think it was justified because, well, there was like so many acts that went against both like the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, and yeah, I think it was justified.
believe it was completely justified because the government wasn't listening to the people when they were saying that certain acts were tyrannical. And the government wasn't fulfilling its purpose, and it was infringing on the rights of the people.
Okay. So this is where we give you some follow-up. I'm sorry, some comments from the judges. I'll have my peers go ahead and get started.
Well, it's good to know that we'd have to go to maybe the Himalayas or other planets to find a state of nature. So I appreciated, you thinking through that, we've got all these governments in these countries around the world, so we may have to really work hard beyond here to find a state of nature. So I appreciated that. I think if I had one suggestion, it would be to be a little more precise in the use of evidence. Like, here's an example, like, for example, I think using that supporting evidence could be a bit better. But you kind of, in my mind, you opened up that question about the American Revolution, and I may have caught you off guard, but I always like to hear people's thoughts on whether they think our country was, our people were justified in the revolution. So I appreciated our conversation on that. Good luck. It's been wonderful to meet you the last couple of days.
I agree. Want to applaud you for all the effort and work you've put on, not just this weekend, but leading up to and preparing for today. I know that's a lot of work. As you all explored the ideas of Jefferson and Locke. Really liked hearing your point about the Articles of Confederation and just the idea there of scrapping it and beginning anew. So as you're thinking about these ideas of what does reform look like, what does overthrow look like, and then sort of wrestling with these ideas of what does that look like historically. Catherine, you mentioned January 6th events at the Capitol. Trying to think about contemporary events and what does that look like in the context of, is that really a reform movement? Would we call that an act of revolution? So just exploring these ideas in the contemporary as well as the historical, would just encourage you to continue to explore, and want to thank you again for all of your hard work.
Yeah, I agree with my peers. In particular, the point that was just made. Tell me January 6th, now tell me how it fits. And that's, I think, the point that Tim was making. There are a lot of places where you clearly showed me you understood stuff. Just take that final step and give me the example which completes the argument. But you clearly put the time in. This is tough stuff. Okay, and to come at us, there's 3 of us and 2 of you. So that makes it even harder. All right. So, but again, thank you so much, folks, for your effort. And it was really wonderful seeing you guys the last couple of days. Thank you.
Thank you.